Herzlich willkommen zu einem weiteren Interview von Citywire Deutschland. Heute bei mir zu Gast ist Tony Roberts. Er ist Fondsmanager bei Invesco und managt dort auch den Metaverse-Fonds, um den es heute gehen soll. So, hi Tony, welcome to this interview.
Nice to meet you, thank you.
So, currently more and more steps are being made into the direction of the Metaverse, and especially ETFs, but in the meantime also fonds are being launched to this effect. And you're a fund manager of a Metaverse fund yourself. So what prompted you to launch it in August this year?
So there's been a lot of hype around the Metaverse. I think the hype really peaked out in October of last year when Facebook changed their name to Meta Platforms. And then since then, stock prices related to the Metaverse has been pretty bad, to be honest. In many cases, that's justified. There was a lot of overvaluation, I think, in some stocks, but in other cases, it's not been justified. There's been real progress. And for us, the Metaverse is the next step in the evolution of the internet. It's a natural consequence of faster internet speeds and more powerful semiconductors. So if you think back to the first iteration of the internet, people call Web 1.0, it was very passive. We just received information. Upload speeds were very poor. It was PC-based. Web 2.0 was a much more interactive experience. We had some upload speeds. We had the iPhone coming in. This is when social media really exploded. But as you get faster semiconductors and faster internet speeds, it seems natural to us that you will get this fully immersive internet experience called the Metaverse. So I feel certainly it's inevitable.
What particular role played the timing of August in this?
Well, these funds take quite a long time to set up. So there's a regulatory process to go through. So it's not like we decided in July and then can launch in August. It's something we were working on for months. But why did we decide to go ahead with it? As I said earlier, we felt there were opportunities and there was good value in that space, especially with the stock prices that we'd seen.
You just mentioned the hype, and to not just invest into hype, a broad diversification is really important. So my next question would be, in which sectors does your fund invest and why?
So we think of the Metaverse value chain as three broad areas. The first is infrastructure, the second is platforms, and the third is content. So the infrastructure will be the data centers that host the Metaverse. It will be the high-speed networks that connect to it, and the hardware that lets you access it. That is, at the moment, PCs and smartphones, but increasingly it's going to be augmented reality and virtual reality. Platforms, the famous platforms of the games companies like Roblox, but also I think social media. So Mark Zuckerberg is investing a lot of money into the Metaverse, and I think he's jealous of the engagement that these games companies have. If you spend time on Instagram, it might be 20 minutes, but on Roblox each time it's 2.5 hours. And then when those platforms get populated, inevitably companies move in to sell to the consumer.
Within those three sectors you named, what criteria must companies meet for your fund to invest in them?
Yeah, well, it's a very young theme, the Metaverse. So you have to have this balance between thematic purity, but also having enough companies to invest in. So we've set various hurdles which a company has to get over to be considered as a candidate for the fund. And these include more than 10% of revenue, more than 10% of growth, and more than 10% of capex directed towards the Metaverse.
So this might sound a bit unusual, but would you find investment in legal companies or also insurance companies also interesting on the long term?
Most legal companies, I would say, are not listed companies. They're private companies, and the fund is restricted to investing in listed companies. But I think it's right to say that the law is going to have an important part in the Metaverse. I think it will. We should welcome regulation. So an example could be, let's say we have a fully cinematic, immersive metaverse world that you're in. Is it right that I should be able to stand right next to somebody? I mean, that will make them feel uncomfortable. I wouldn't be able to go and stand right next to a woman in the street. And we know that's wrong. It's kind of borderline harassment. And Meta, in their Horizon worlds, they've been introducing personal spaces so that your avatar can't stand within, say, 1 meter of somebody else's avatar. So I think that kind of regulation will be welcome. And insurance, I think on the insurance side, there'll be insurance against hacking and data breaches, that type of thing.
To be a bit more concrete on your portfolio, is there a particular reason why it contains few pure plays?
So there are few pure plays at the moment because it's a young theme, but also the pure plays seem to get super expensive pretty quickly. There's a scarcity value. And I think one approach we have, which is different to some ETFs, for example, is once a candidate's over this hurdle, we will weight on the basis of risk-adjusted return, our forecast risk-adjusted return. Whereas a lot of the ETFs will weight a stock based on thematic purity. So a very high thematically pure stock they'll give a high weighting to, and if it's less thematically pure, a low weighting to. But we feel that doesn't really incorporate the fundamentals of the company in the stock price.
According to locations, what do you think are the most important for the metaverse at the moment?
So the US is the leader in tech. So it's no surprise that they're a big weighting in the fund. But they do focus on design. And they've outsourced a lot of manufacturing, maybe too much manufacturing, to Asia in particular. So Asia, the source of most US logic semiconductors will be made in Taiwan. So that's an interesting area for us to look at. But also in Japan, I talked about games earlier as platforms evolving into more broader metaverse experiences. Japan has a lot of good gaming IP.
Apart from Japan, what role do you see for Europe, but especially for Germany, in the development of the metaverse?
So Germany is an industrial powerhouse, and the industrial metaverse is an area where we are particularly excited because this is something that's happening now today, hidden away from consumers' eyes. So let me give you a couple of examples. And here I have to introduce the concept of digital twins. So a digital twin is a virtual asset which is identical in every way to a physical asset, except it only exists digitally. And BMW, for example, they've built a replica of one of their factories, identical in every way, except it only exists digitally. So why would they do this? This helps them with their planning. So let's say they want to change the model they're producing on a particular line. They have to close the line, retool, and then start the line again. When the line's closed, they're not making any cars. So instead of doing that, they will do that in the digital twin. So there's this really good video on YouTube. You can see where there's a guy in a studio. He puts on a VR headset, and as far as he's concerned, he's in the factory. And then the engineers are looking in through their computers. They're seeing what he's doing. He's picking up the parts, putting them into the cars, doing this kind of time and motion study. And only when it's optimized will they shut the actual factory line and retool. And BMW have said that's given them 30% efficiency gains already in their production planning. But it's not just efficiency gains. There's a nice bit in that video where he bends down and he says, "My back hurts." So they just drag this object higher, and he says that's better. So there are health and safety aspects to it as well. And then another one, which is I think relevant for Germany, is a kind of monitoring that you can do with digital twins. So here's an example of an offshore wind turbine. There will exist in the metaverse a complete replica of an offshore wind turbine, and with that you can accelerate the life of the wind turbine. And you can see what it will look like in 5 years or 7 years, where the stresses and the strains are, and which parts will fail, and when they will fail. And then you can have your inventory suited at the appropriate time for the appropriate parts. So the industrial metaverse. One of the leaders there is NVIDIA. They have their Omniverse industrial metaverse platform. They've already got 150 companies using it. I think more broadly outside of Germany, within Europe, once the populations of these metaverse experiences grow, I think people will be buying luxury items within those. And we get some pushback here, and people say, "Why would I buy a virtual? Why would I buy a virtual bag? Why would I buy a virtual anything? Because I can't do anything with it." But Nike have already made $185 million selling virtual trainers. Everything you buy in the game Fortnite is entirely cosmetic. There's no competitive advantage. And they make billions every year. And I would say that there's little difference between a luxury item in the real world, where maybe 1% of the cost is to do with utility and 99% is showing off, and the same thing in the virtual world, where it's going to be entirely about showing off.
So thank you so much for the interview, Tony, which was really exciting on this really exciting topic as well.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.